In the last section, we generated our first React Native project at the command line using the React Native CLI tools. At the end of that installation process, you should have seen some instructions like this. In other words, how to run our app on iOS and how to run it on Android. Now, let me be very clear here that the React Native team is being almost sadistic, I would say. I'm going to be honest with you, almost sadistic by making it sound like this is as easy as it is to get started with Android. No, there is certainly, without a doubt, a lot more installation that has to go on outside of just running this simple little command here. So in this section, we're going to get at some of that additional setup that kind of gets glossed over. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. The first thing I'm going to do is open up the Android Studio. So we just finished installing that in the next section, or last section, excuse me. I'm going to go ahead and pop it open. And then once it's open, I'm going to open an existing Android Studio project. So believe it or not, when we created our React Native project in the last section, that gave us a starting Android project. So I'm going to open up an existing project. And I'm going to navigate to the folder where I placed that project. So for me, I placed it on my E drive inside of a folder called React Native. That generated a project called Albums. And inside of there is a folder called Android. And this is our Android project right here. So I'm going to go ahead and open it on up. And this is going to take just a moment to pop open. All right, there we go. So when we first open this up, I get a nice big error message here. You might get a little bit of a different message. You might see something that says like, I don't know, hey, compiling Gradle or something like that down at the bottom. So if you see that message, that is totally fine. Just let it do its thing. After a couple of seconds, like 20 or 30, you'll see a tab pop up here on the bottom, something that says Messages. So click on Messages, and you should see the message that I see right here. Now I know that the text is a little bit small here, but what it says is cause fail to find target with hash string Android 23. And then beneath it is a nice little link that says install missing platforms and sync project. This little button right here, this link, oh, you have no idea how much pain this thing is saving us from. It is saving us from a lot of hassle and a lot of trouble. So we're just going to click this link right here. And thank goodness, Android Studio is going to automatically download and install a little bit of software for us. So we're going to click accept on the license agreement. Next, we'll download the SDK. It will unzip it for us and go through the installation. Now I certainly could pause the video here, but yeah, again, it only takes a moment to finish up. So all done there. I'll click finish. And now, again, I get another error message pop up right away saying, hey, failed to find build tools revision 23. Again, we will click on the very helpful link right here, install build tools 23 and sync project. And boom, we're good to go. Again, you wouldn't believe how much trouble that just saved for us. That just saved us a lot of trouble. By the way, if you get a Gradle plugin pop-up, we are going to hit don't remind me again for this project, and okay, we're good to go. Okay, so we still have a little bit of work to do here. What we just installed were some tools to set up an Android emulator, something that can like run our React Native application on the desktop that we can debug against on the fly. So we still have a little bit of setup to do though. The next thing I'm going to do is create an Android emulator that we can actually use for our debugging process. So up at the very top, I'm going to click on Tools, Android, and then AVD Manager. Once I click on that, we get a nice big pop-up, something about your virtual devices. So a virtual device is an Android emulator. It is a window that lets us run the Android operating system inside of Windows. So we will create a virtual device. By default, I have Nexus 5 selected. If you see another default selection, that's totally fine. Just make sure that you get a screen size right around 5 inches. So the Nexus 5 is 4.95. That's good enough for me. I'll click Next. And then here is the next little troublesome bit, I guess you could say. By default, it tries to create a emulator with version 24 of Android. Right now, React Native is making use of React Native version 23. So instead, I'm going to select Marshmallow Download and go through the download process again. So just like the others, this will only take a moment to get started. We'll go through the download, the unzipping, and installation. You know, I had considered, I knew that there were going to be some pauses here for downloading and unzipping, and I'm kicking myself because I really wanted to like put together some jokes, you know, that I could tell you while the installation was going, but I just completely forgot it. Maybe next time we'll do some funny jokes. Anyways, all right, let's hit finish. Download is all finished. And now we can select that API level 23. Then click next. This has some information about the device we're about to build. We don't have to configure anything else here. I'll just click next, or in this case, finish, excuse me. And then finally, I can find Nexus 5. This is now my emulator. This is my virtual device that I can launch on my desktop. So on the far right-hand side is a play button underneath Actions. I'll click it, and this is going to start up our Android emulator. So I get spinner, and wow, yep, it really looks like an actual phone. So this is going to take a little bit of time to boot up initially, but we still have a little bit of setup left to do. And this last little bit is certainly, let me tell you, it is definitely the painful part. This is the part where you definitely made the right decision by checking out my course, because otherwise there are not a lot of solutions online for troubleshooting this last little bit. So I'm not going to tell you exactly what the problem is. We are just going to jump to the solution and what a solution it is. At my start menu, I'm going to open it up, and then I'm going to search for system settings. And the result I should get here is View Advanced System Settings. I'll go ahead and click it. And then I get my System Properties window right here. This might look a little bit familiar if you've ever messed around with Windows that much. I've got tabs like Computer Name, Hardware, and Advanced. So on the Advanced window, I want to click on Environment Variables. So we are going to add 2 environment variables to Windows. The first one that we're going to add, I'll click on New. And then I'm going to enter a name of Java Home. So by default, the React Native packager, or the thing that kind of like builds our application, expects to have access to this environment variable called Java Home. But by default, it doesn't actually exist on a brand new operating system. One thing I want to mention is that if you already have a variable of Java Home, you do not need to add this one in. So if you scan over this list, you see one that says Java Home, you don't need to go through this process. But if you do not see Java Home, go ahead and click on that New button and add the variable name of Java Home. Then for a variable value, we will click on Browse Directory. And in the window that pops up, I'll click on This PC. I'll click on the C drive. I'll click on Program Files. I'll expand Java. And finally, I will select the JDK that we just installed. So JDK 1.8. And then I'll click OK. And then OK again. So now I have a environment variable of Java _ home and a value of C program files, Java, JDK, blah, blah, blah. All right, one other thing that we need to do. We also need to add in another directory to our path variable. So on this list of different environment variables, you should already have one listed here called path. So definitely scroll up and down. I guarantee you have it. I'll click on Edit because I want to edit my path. And then I will click on New on the right-hand side, top right-hand side. And you can see right here we can enter in a path. So if you recall, when we were going through the Android Studio setup, I said, hey, check out your username right there, right? And for me, it was computer. For you is whatever your username is. This is where that is relevant. Okay, so this is where we're going to make use of that. So I'm going to enter in my path. So I'll put in C users computer. So again, for me, it is computer. For you is whatever your login username is. For me, it's computer. For you, it will be something different. And then we're going to point it to app data local, Android SDK platform-tools, like so. As a quick little check, just to make sure that I have the right link, I am going to copy this link. So I selected everything. I'm going to copy it. I'm going to then open up Windows Explorer, paste the link, and just verify, yes, this directory exists here. So again, just go ahead, copy that link, paste it into Windows Explorer, verify that it exists. If you get an error message popping up that says like, hey, that directory doesn't exist, chances are you entered in the incorrect username. So make sure that you've got the correct username for your login on your particular machine. Okay, so now that this is all done, I'll click OK. I'll click OK. I'll click OK. And the last thing I'm going to do is restart my command prompt now. So I'm going to close the command prompt. I will open it back up by searching for command, right-click on it, run as administrator. And now we are finally ready to actually test our application inside of the emulator. So I'm going to change back to my project directory, which for me is on my E drive. So I'm now inside of my project directory. It'll be whatever your working directory is, wherever you put your projects. For me, I'm calling it React Native. And then the name of the project that we just generated, which is albums. So the very last step inside of here, I will write out React-Native run-Android. And this is, I'll be totally honest with you, this is the absolute moment of truth right here as to whether or not this is going to work. When I run that command, you'll see another window pop up. This is the React Native packager. This is what takes all of our JavaScript code, compresses it all down into a single JavaScript file, and then makes it available to the device. And then over here, back in the original window, our application is building for the Android device, and it's then going to automatically install and open it on the device. And there we go. So installing APK on appdebug.apk, and then we can see everything pop up over here on the right-hand side. Fetching JavaScript bundle, that means that it is pulling all the starter code, and then eventually, yep, there we go. Welcome to React Native. So by default, to refresh any code, I know that I'm going to give you a little bit of instructions right now that are very particular to Android, and I know that they might not make a ton of sense until we start writing some code, but I just want to mention them very quickly. First off, by default, to refresh our simulator or to get any changes to our code base that we've made, we can follow the directions right on here. So just double tap R to refresh, and as you can see, it makes another request for our JavaScript bundle. The other thing that I want to mention is shake or press menu button for dev menu. So looking down here, okay, I don't really see any menu button like it makes reference to. And then looking on the right hand side, I also don't see any. So here's a little trick. To open up this dev menu that it's talking about, we can press Control-M, and that opens up the development menu. So as we work through the course, I will be using the iOS simulator, but I will many times say, okay, I'm going to open up my development menu right here. We on Android do that by pressing Control-M. And again, just to be clear, whenever I refer to refreshing the application, we will double tap R to refresh our simulator. Okay, so that's it. We got our Android emulator up and working. The last thing that I want to mention to you is, hey, we went through all this process just to get here. What happens when I close everything? How do I get everything started back up? So once you close everything, let's say you shut down your computer for the night or whatever it might be, you can get started again by opening up your Android Studio again. You can open up your React Native project again. You'll go back up to the Tools menu, Android, AVD Manager, and then click the play button on the right. That will start up the emulator. And then inside of our command line at the command prompt, we will change into our project directory and run the same command again, React-Native run-Android. So those are the two steps for getting started back up if you ever decide to take a break or shut down your computer for the night or whatever it might be. React Native, run Android, and don't forget to start up the emulator as well. Okay, so I hope this didn't seem that bad because trust me, I spent a tremendous amount of time poring over Android setup to getting it down to like just the bare essentials of what you need to install to get started. So hopefully everything is working now. Let's continue and start working on our first application in the next section.